happening in your community. Greenville Grit is sponsored by Ribeyes, Kid Construction, and Greenville Toyota. Now, here are your hosts for Greenville Grit, Terry Williams and Michael Overton.
Good evening and welcome to Greenville Grit. I am Terry Williams.
I'm Michael Overton. Terry, good to see you this afternoon. We're going to have a good guest on here in a few minutes. He's not here yet. Mr. Mayor, good to see you, sir. What's that? Crickets. Yeah, you're not here yet. Anyway, he's coming in the door. We'll get a crack on that.
But right.
Hot days. It's hot.
It really is. We're getting that summertime feeling now. School's out this week, graduation, and it feels like summer.
Yeah, it definitely feels like summer. So hopefully all of our listeners are enjoying themselves and are going to have a good summer. We also have to, we're going to have Alan on, and we're going to just talk about some of the city issues. You got budget stuff we're going to talk about, and the term limit, some of the other things that have been discussed in some of our city council meetings. Before we do the show, we always thank the sponsors that allowed the show to go on. So thank you so much, Greenville Toyota, for your continued support since the very beginning of the show. If you're looking for a new Toyota or Scion vehicle or a new used car, go see Craig Gois and the Greenville Toyota team. You can call them at 321-3000 on the web at greenvilletoyota.com or in person across from Fresh Market on Memorial Drive. Also got to thank the Overton Group, real estate professional serving all of Eastern North Carolina. If you're looking for commercial leasing, sales, business brokers looking to either buy or sell a business, residential brokerage or property management, give us a call at 355-7006 or on the web at overtongroup.net. And Ribeye Steakhouse.
Finally got to try the pork chops.
Was it good?
Excellent.
And I've heard it's
very
good. But the thing is, I like steak so much, I can't try the pork chop.
But it was really good.
And I think he's doing bands every Thursday night now.
And they have early bird specials if you go before 5:30, I think it is.
I have never eaten I eat lunch at 5:30.
No, me too sometimes.
Okay. So try them out. They're on Fire Tower Road at the corner of Fire Tower and Arlington Boulevard. And they're also in Williamston, a great salad bar. And if you mention Greenville Grit, you're supposed to get a surprise. So thank you, Ribeyes, for continuing to sponsor us and supporting us. So we're going to take this 2-minute commercial break. We're going to come back, start getting in some of the items, and then Mr. Mayor will be here in a few minutes so we can catch up with him and talk about what's going on. Be back in 2 minutes. Welcome back to the Greenville Grit. I am Michael Overton, along with my co-host Terry Williams. Greenville Mayor Alan Thomas will be here in a few minutes, but we have a few things to talk about, Terry, before he comes on. Got an email this week from the, I know we beat the bond thing to death, but we got an email this week from the city. So for those, this isn't us speaking for or against it, but for those who are interested in serving on a bond educational or bond advocacy committee, you give them a call. The bond advocacy committee will consist of individuals in support of the bond package who will work to rally support from voters in the community. And then the bond educational committee will provide answers and information on the bond items, but will not advocate either way for the bond referendum. And just to kind of total it up again for everyone to know how this bond broke up, it is a $15.85 million bond, street improvements of $10 million. 10th Street Connector is $1.75. And just to clarify, and people don't know maybe what that is, the 10th Street Connector is being paid for by the Department of Transportation. The $1.75 million is for improvements. That could be planters, it could be lights, wider sidewalks, making it more pedestrian and frankly viewer friendly. And we supported that originally in our meetings because you got to do that when the road's built.
I believe that's part of the agreement anyway. I believe we have to.
Well, we're stuck.
Honor that with the enhancements.
Regardless of whether the bond.
However we pay for it.
We are having to pay for that. That's coming out of somewhere. Sidewalks was $1.4 million, and I believe the original bond.
It's $500,000.
Yeah, we had done $500,000. West 5th Street streetscape of $2 million. And Terry, why don't you talk really quickly about that?
The second phase is shovel ready. It's ready to go. And if you all have, whoever in the public has gone by 5th Street and seen how the first section was done and the beautiful wall in front of the Epps High School, former Epps High School, this would be the next section. It's not as much of the section as you would think, but I do believe it does include a roundabout to help straighten out some of the roads when they start working on it. I think it's Tyson Street or one of the streets they don't cross at the intersection right, and so they're going to make some changes.
We're talking about having a roundabout in there?
They're going to have a roundabout there. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
And then the last one was the East Side Greenway. Again, that has been the one that has been very controversial.
Right.
But again, if you're interested in supporting it, get involved with the city. Call the city manager's office. I'm sure they could probably give you some direction of how to get involved with either one of either advocacy or the educational committee. So that's a big thing.
I am hoping, just to say something about the greenways, if this bond does pass and this greenway is included in the bond as it has been set to be done now, I am hoping that those that are, everybody, whoever is in favor of that greenway will maybe work on a public-private partnership.
That's what needs to be done. And that's
to
frankly,
finish that greenway.
Yeah, and people that know me personally.
Instead of keep coming back, to raising taxes or whatever it's going to take, finding it somewhere, in the budget. We'll get into the budget talk a little bit later, but I do hope that will happen and that they'll be proactive about that.
Well, and I think people that know me have, and I've stated several times, I would love to see a public-private partnership get involved for people from private businesses or private individuals.
That's right.
Then maybe we could do city matches.
Right.
If the public can raise $100,000 in donations.
That's right.
That the city would match that, and it would save the taxpayers' money, but it would also have people truly invested.
And it might
in
enable us to finish it as every, one would like to see it instead of dragging it out. I'm sure those that use it, and I've used it some too, and my grandchildren, and it's not a bad thing. That wasn't even ever the issue of whether or not it was a good thing for Greenville. It just was, how were we going to pay for it?
Yeah.
So.
Well, a couple other things. In the last city council meeting, term limits.
That's right.
What do you think?
Well, they voted not to carry on the conversation anymore.
Even after many months of negative feedback from citizens.
Did. I think they got a report. I didn't see the whole entire meeting, but got a report from the public hearing that they had that most of the consensus was not to discuss it any longer, leave it like it is.
Well, and it goes back to me, I had this with some of the people who are on the city council now. I don't have a problem with a 4-year. My issue was term limits.
Right.
You do term limits, you got to have 4 year. Now that doesn't mean you can be in a District 4 seat, go to at large, and it resets. No. I was saying 8 years period, and you're out of city government.
Right.
That's my opinion, because people, what happens, and they disagreed with me, the city council, and the reason that they disagreed with me is they said, well, you could possibly be kicking someone very good out. That is a possibility.
Right.
But my belief is, and this is the same thing for our congressional delegation locally and federally, is when you're there for so long, it doesn't become the people's seat anymore. It becomes yours.
Right.
And I have a feeling that the same thing can happen locally, whether it was you or I in there, Terry, or not.
That's right.
But people just get tired of you after a while.
Well, I like leaving it at 2 years. I just think, based on obviously
There still should be
the
term
disappointment that I have had with certain members of this council, I would like to see it stay at 2 year.
Well, obviously and hopefully it is right now, and I know when we ran, that it's got to be tough in a way. And even think about the state guys that are running every 2 years.
Right.
They're having to start this process and raise a lot of money.
They've done their good job. They shouldn't worry too much about their reelection.
That's true.
I would like to hear the council stop talking about term limits and all of that sort of thing and work on economic development. I'm really very concerned about that.
Well, now what was the deal a few nights ago? Didn't they talk about lowering the tax rate again? That's continuing to come up.
I know. When Alan gets here, I would really like for him to explain exactly what that discussion was about, because if you listen to the city council meeting, it's a bit confusing to figure out exactly what they said by the time the meeting's over. So it was very confusing to me.
First of all, if you can listen for 4.5 hours or 5 hours, I have to say that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I guess.
They gave an update on hires: police chief, assistant managers, economic development officers. I know when what was this, in 2011, when the council came in with Alan Thomas, Dennis Mitchell came in, there was quite a few people that left.
Right.
And I guess it could be argued whether that was good or bad.
Well, Calvin keeps bringing that up on his newsletter, which I think that's old. I think that's over and it's old, and I think he needs to talk about something else, because I never believed that was the case anyway, but we have that same issue going on right now with some unhappiness. I mean, you're going to always have that when
you're
you
always going to have staff turnover.
Yeah,
too.
You're going to have staff turnover. It just happens. So, anyway, We have a guest.
We have a guest, Mr. Mayor.
How are
I've
you?
already cracked on you that you weren't here yet, so I'm glad you could show up.
My 5 hours of the council meeting Monday was a lot longer than
We
you
were just
served.
cracking on
you
you 5
served
hours.
this week, so I'm still 4 hours ahead of
That's
you.
okay. We're glad you're here.
Good to see you.
Good to see you
Yeah, we were just
too.
cracking about. She said listening to the 4-hour meeting. I said, if you can listen to a 4.5-hour meeting, that's pretty impressive. So 5
Well,
hours.
it's much more fun when you're up there having to procedurally run a meeting
Oh,
for 5
goodness.
hours, and there's a whole another dynamic involved with that. So,
Well,
but that's
what we-
part of government. It's how
It's
it works.
just what we were saying was it's hard to follow, so we want some clarification on some decisions that,
Okay,
or,
well,
that you
and
did
we
or
can
didn't
start,
make.
and actually, it was good timing when
Yeah,
you
it
walked in the
is.
room. We were talking about some of the hires. People were concerned about what are we going to do about a police chief. And Ted Sauls, I think, he's a friend of mine, but he's also, I think, doing a great job. But
Yes.
What are we doing to get a permanent police chief in here, and then
Economic development's
assistant city
really-
manager back in
assistant
here?
city
But-
manager,
and
that's
and
right.
some of our concern and several people's concern is economic development.
Well, I think the main theme here is something that I spoke with some individuals today on, is that we have gone back, and not through any action of my own. I mean, my approach is very proactive. Plan for a decade ahead, have a game plan. Until we came in office, there was no Office of Economic Development.
Right.
There was no road plan. There was no path forward on how we were going to incorporate infrastructure and economic development. And we saw the benefits from that the past few years. It's clear.
Right.
Now we have, with the dynamics that are currently on council, we've gone back to more of a reactionary plan.
You don't say.
One year, the council votes to raise taxes multiple times. The next year, they vote to pull taxes back.
Right.
Now they're projecting to raise taxes again next year. These are reactionary moves.
Right.
What are we doing proactively in economic development and planning? If we're going to do something, be consistent. Don't be
Right.
volatile. Show that you have a long-term plan and not wait for which way the wind's blowing, and have those type of responses. And you mentioned we did get a brief update Monday. We'll have we're down to the final candidates on the police chief decision. And the final call is the city managers to make, as she
Right.
also hired Hassan Aiden. Don't ever forget that.
Right.
Now, he met the criteria that we pushed for.
Sure.
That when we raised the bar with Chief Anderson, who'd been here before and decided to exit, we raised the bar and said these are the things that we're expecting, and that was part of the criteria when we hired Hassan Aiden. Also on the clock is the hiring of a new economic developer, head of development. We have a staff now that Carl Reese has did an incredible job. We started the Office of Economic Development in over 2 years, built that out, and you can see the results all around Greenville, with that. And also the assistant city manager role, which is something I'm particularly have an eye on, is much more having your finger on the financial pulse of this community. Because it's not just about taxes, it's also about debt, fee increases, studies, all these things fit together organically in how you run a city. And one hand can't do what the other hand, not know what the other hand's doing.
Right.
And I think we're dealing with that a lot. And I think there is, as mayor, I have a chance to come out and speak, and I represent the city, dealing with state and federal and so many other issues regionally. But when you step up there on that council, there are 6 people that vote. And I can talk myself.
No, there's
till
only
I'm-
4.
Well, I can talk to myself till I'm blue in the face, but we have to continue to, instead of being reactionary, we have got to get back
Right.
to a proactive strategy. This budget represents a reactionary budget. It does not fulfill the needs that we need in law enforcement, in EMS and rescue,
In roads.
and shortfalls in some other areas. It actually dips into the health fund and some other funds, which were set up to have long-term sustainability. Just to meet this arbitrary 14% fund balance number, they are dipping in the funds. That's
that-
one time. That's the one thing we accuse the federal and state of taking one-time money, and we got to get back on track.
Well, that's why I didn't really understand why they're even worrying about right now with giving back the tax. Why don't they just wait, see do what they need to do within the
Because
budget?
that's a campaign thing,
I know
Terry.
that.
Now they
but
can
it's
say they
not
lowered the
really a
taxes.
good thing. I mean, they may not need all of that, for the bond, like we've said in the past. The other bonds that were passed, they didn't need a tax increase for. But there's
Well,
other things that need to be taken
Well,
care
I'll
of.
say this today, and for any part of this bond, there should be no tax increase included in this bond. If we want to have the public's trust and ask them to vote, ask me to vote, ask you to vote in
Right.
support of this bond for all of these items, if you're going to combine them, then you have to extend the hand to the public in Greenville and say, we will find a way to handle the debt service within our budget. And not just that. We need to be sophisticated in how we roll out the bond. You don't have to take on all that debt right now. Only take on the pressing needs, which are roads. We won't even be able to issue that debt until mid-spring next year. So it would really be next year's budget where you'd be looking at this. So my position is I don't think we should raise taxes to support this bond at all. Those items seem to have been dovetailed together.
Right.
I think debt service should be something that should be handled. If we're going to do items that council members feel are essential, then let them show me where they're going to make cuts within the budget instead of cuts in your pocket and your wallet. The easy thing is always just to pass a tax.
Right.
The smart thing to do is go back and how you grow this city and create return on investment and tax-based growth here to handle these type of projects. That's been the fundamental difference in the argument, I think, all along and where we stand with council.
Right.
Well, and some of the other thing we talked about before you came in, and I think it's a moot point not to go over, but term limits. But what else since you came on here a couple weeks ago, city council meetings, some of the items going on today, what other things would you say are big that we probably need to discuss that the public needs to know?
Well, we keep our eye on Raleigh. Raleigh has a big impact, more than in many years, on how we budget. I know right now there's a package coming from the Senate, which my understanding is tomorrow. Well, actually, sometime later today, which will be handed over tomorrow to the House, which has an element that could, for the first time ever, take all of the sales tax and take that distribution and take that over in Raleigh. And that's something I know that the county commissioners, Glenn Webb, who's the incoming president, they have a position against that, and we agree. I am fundamentally against consolidating all power in Raleigh. And it's kind of ironic with the leadership we have on the state level now. This seems to be the exact polar opposite of fundamentally, ideologically, what you would hear. It's interesting when you get inside of the Beltway, how it seems to impact certain people, and it becomes the ideology becomes adjusted to meet the means. So we're seeing a consolidation, and I know Tim Moore had a good conversation with him yesterday, who's the Speaker of the House. You know, we're engaged more than ever. We have to have city leadership engaged in Raleigh and be a part of the debate. Explain to them that when you do this, I can't hire policemen. I can't keep the community safe. I can't keep areas well lit. I can't plan for 2020 and 2030, which allows me to bring jobs from other states here. So, you know, they have to put more trust back in the local communities. We're here on one side of the mouth talking about putting local control for schools and things of that nature. But on the other side, all the purse strings seem to be getting pulled in Raleigh. So I have faith in our legislative delegation, and once it's all said and done, that hopefully this thing's going to net out where they continue to keep the senators and House members come and go. But that basic trust that needs to be on the local level, grassroots, needs to never be tampered with if you're going to have a good state. And we've been very healthy as a state for decades, living that philosophy, and we need to continue that philosophy.
Well, I may have missed this part, but when they took away the funding through the privilege license, have they done something in this budget that they're presenting in Raleigh to give that back to the communities yet?
They have not. And that is something that is another item that there are a number of items that are out there. And that's an interesting one. Rather than redirecting the funds, they eliminated a stream of funds. And the largest payers of that are the large corporate box stores. And what that allows us to do, many don't know that behind the scenes that we had close to 1,000 calls for service just at one major box store last year. Think about that. 1,000 calls for service.
We all know which one it is.
Yeah.
But think about adding in contribution. So that's man hours, woman hours for processing, dealing with loss management, keeping areas safe. To have strong, successful retail corridors, you got to have a specific. I like the idea of a dedicated fund related to that. That's what they should have done. That this has to be used for retail and commercial. But what happened? Here's why they were right. Some cities were abusing the privilege. Many cities were reaching out beyond their boundaries to other communities and saying, if you even do business here, you have to have a privilege license. And what I would have agreed and still recommend to this day is that there should be a across-the-board pervasive privilege license across the entire state. And it should be a designated line item, just like Powell bill money is supposed to be dedicated for roads. There should be a quote-unquote Powell bill money line item related to privilege license. That way, it's equal, and Greenville was guilty of it as well. We had kept a very conservative number for decades since it was implemented. And again, a new council came in, and within 3 months, staff recommended a modest increase, and their vote on a 4-2 vote was to make it uncapped.
Right.
And we ended up being quoted in the Senate
we were the reason
hearing.
they even started talking about it.
Well, Charlotte and other cities had already abused it, but because it had just been done, and I warned in the meeting that we ended up actually being quoted in the Senate hearing as Greenville as an example of why this needs to be, rather than changed, eliminated. So, look, what we do here resonates. So that's something I think we always need to know.
That goes back to the not having the vision or looking forward, but the reaction. You don't think about the consequences of the decisions that we make, and that's been some of the critique that you and I have given to the current council was there's no forward thinking. If we do this, then what's going to happen?
Well, how it all fits together.
Yeah.
I agree, and it's not from lack of trying and effort to communicate, and we elect our representatives of our city, and people need to understand that they need to voice their interests and concerns, and not just one little special interest or one little segment. There's 90,000 of us here.
But only 15% on average vote, which is disheartening.
And I hope
you
that will
always
change.
and you know
I think
this.
it will change this year. I'm hoping so.
Well, you know this. Both the times I ran for office, I'd never been in office before. I'm a business person. I know about having to meet payroll and the bottom line and how that works. I think about that all the time. And both the times I ran, I didn't necessarily run against an opponent. I ran against apathy, saying you need to show up and vote.
Right.
Don't come and complain a year and a half from now if taxes increase, or if development designs have gone, or some rules in place that inhibits your business, or you're concerned about safety at school or your personal rights. Don't complain a year and a half ago if you did not take the time in early voting or voting to come out and vote.
So easy. Early voting, so easy.
Because the media is covered every day, inundated with federal news and global news. But what really impacts you every day when you have to push your trash can out to the corner? That impacts you every day.
That's right.
When it floods in your backyard, that impacts you when your road is not safe.
Right.
Things that are real. There are things I think that media-wise I think gets played up 90% of the time. But on the real things that impact you every day, we need you. We need you engaged and involved, and that includes voting. And also, just like you have to deal with personal finances, getting engaged and understanding how important that is for our future in Greenville.
Right.
Well, let's go back to budgeting, and we'll decide, I guess, in a couple minutes we're going to have our break. But something that bugs me when you look at public sector, and I'm not trying to raise the ire of public sector people that feel that every year that they should get an increase in their payroll every year just for having that public job. When we have opportunities in our city, and I'm going to use sanitation department because you guys have done an amazing job. That was something that you led, changing that. And I know, and I've heard from very credible sources that the number of cans that some of these trucks can pick up can go up to almost 1,000 a day, which is probably 4 times what
More
they
than
did
that.
before.
Yes, more.
Those guys, I would have no problems as a business guy saying, you know what, if your performance, if you can hit this level, I have no problems paying you a lot of money to hit that level, because you're taking that one team is taking the place of 3 other teams in the past. Why can't we look as a city doing that, or going to, I'll use Kevin Mulligan, he was on here recently, saying, Kevin, if you've got a $2 million budget and your budget represents 5% of the total city budget here, or 10%, whatever the number is, and you come in underneath that budget, whatever X amount of savings you guys come under budget, that you can have bonuses spread across your department. And I know a lot of the reason that municipalities don't like to come into the budget is because they feel they're going to lose the money the next year.
That's right.
But giving them the comfort they're not have their budgets cut the next year, but to be aggressive and getting more aggressive and saving the taxpayers' money instead of spending it.
Well, we do that right now with the convention center. We have a contract with the convention center, and if they hit a number, anything above that, they make. So they have significant incentive to do well. And so we work with them with that budget. And also within the context of the city budget, you have the general fund, which is handled for projects and items of that nature, but you also have separate funds. The sanitation is its own fund. Stormwater is its own fund. We have 4 or 5 other major funds that are particularly already cordoned off because we want to be able to monitor individually what they do. And what you got to be careful too is Greenville's been around a long time. If you make a sudden
No, I'm not talking about sudden.
If you make a sudden jolt move, then you have a potential to have other ramifications. So that's why we did a 5-year sanitation plan. We ran those numbers. We found out that we had more employees in sanitation. And we're spending more per can than the city of Greensboro.
Right.
In other cities that were 3 times larger than us. So we went to the efficiency model of saying, rather than having 3 to 4 FTEs, workers per vehicle, that we were going to transition. But we also were going to honor our commitment to those employees. So we were able to, some of them have transitioned to other jobs. No one's been fired. But you're right, there's some efficiency models but we could do that in the old budget process we did in 2011, but now they've gone back to the old process that has very little interaction with council. So some of the things that are being voted on now that I don't even get a vote in, they're finding out after the fact and aren't really even aware because we're not going on a department by department level and looking at how to be innovative. And that's where we depend on you guys to help do that.
Well, you can have the efficiency model, but that efficiency model has to come with something for those employees to have that incentive to do better.
That's right.
Well, you have to have on an employee by employee level. There has to be a merit associated with doing a good job. That year, if you were this much more productive in your routes or covered many more homes or able to do this much more. But here's the other element. This is where it gets complicated. The HR system has not been overhauled, similar to sanitation. We inherited a lot of kicking of the cans over the past 10 to 15 years. So again, we've told Leah that she has to come to every single council meeting from now on and give us an update on where we are with this entire HR complete reinvention of itself. And it should have been done by this budget cycle. I'm disappointed they did not. They're on notice that for the next budget cycle, we can't even do merit like GUC because of the archaic nature of how we pay and deal with our employees. So that is a key piece. Snapping our finger about what we want to do, I'm all for that. But what happens next? How do you do it? Where does the rubber meets the road? So I'm with you, and this would allow us to do that. So getting this piece with the HR where we actually have every individual employee can have their specific measurables just like any major company does. We have 750 plus employees in the city of Greenville. It's a major company.
Right.
If you look at the budget that we're going to pass Thursday, it's going to be over $400 million, what we will vote on with GUC, the library, the convention center, the city's regular budget and funds. It's a very large footprint, the largest in Eastern North Carolina.
Well, thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Even in the time you're here, we got a lot covered and talked about a lot. And again, thank you for the leadership of the city and good luck on Thursday night with the budget.
I will say this again. We had a public hearing Monday and not a single member of the public showed up.
Kind of hard
to
Can't
discuss.
complain when you're not there. So you better be at the voting booth. Well, we got to thank everyone again, our sponsors, Ribeye Steakhouse, Greenville Toyota, and the Overton Group. Thank you for joining in. You can catch us again on Friday night at 6:30 as well as Saturday morning at 9:30. Terry, is that right?
That's right.
On Cable 7, or also type up YouTube and type up Greenville Grit. Thank you for joining in. We'll see you next week.